Hi, and welcome to the Whiskey Edition. My name is Rob, and today we're going to look at some local flair from the Pacific Northwest. We have a tour from the Oola Distillery, which is coming up in a few minutes. And that was organized by NorthWest Bourbon, by Mark, and he invited me along as a fellow whiskey tuber, and I really appreciate that. It was a really good time, and it's great to go and see how the bourbon is made that we love so much, and what goes into making those drams that we so much enjoy. And so what follows next is this video. I've clipped it down quite a bit. The founder of Oola Distillery, who gave us a tour, Kirby, is who you will see in the white shirt. My skills at doing live or somewhat live recordings of live events has a lot to be desired. This was the first one I had done, and the tough part is there is so much information given out in one of these tours that you really have to go yourself and enjoy them and get the information. I've tried to clip out a lot of you have to almost be a freaking chemical PhD to figure out some of this long chain sugar stuff that he was talking about. I've cut most of that out and tried to just keep the things that I thought were more interesting to just the casual, bourbon lover or even distilled product lover, for that matter. There's a lot of background noise in a distillery. It wasn't like an after-hours private tour. They were working, bottling, squirting, doing all kinds of things that need to be done to make their product. You can purchase the bottles, shirts, and merch at the distillery, just like a lot of the other distilleries. And from what Kirby had said, they're going to be opening a larger visitor tasting room nearby in the future. I'm not sure when that's going to be. So I recommend going and checking them out. You can fast forward through the tour if you've been there, or if it's not your jam, whatever. And afterwards, we'll be looking at some local offerings from some of the distilleries here in the Pacific Northwest. Here's the video. Here we are outside the Oola Distillery in Seattle, Washington. We just had a little bit of a tour. Let's take a look and see what we saw inside.
Our friendly competitors. But hats off to Dry Fly. I always have to say that because the owners of Dry Fly Distillery actually lobbied the legislature in 2007 and got laws changed that allow us all to exist as small distilleries. So without their efforts, we wouldn't be here today. So hats off to them for that. Otherwise, we're Woodinville whiskey and Westland whiskey. Both make a great product. They're now sold to big multinationals, which really bummed me out. But the cool thing is they didn't dumb down the whiskey program and rely on marketing like can happen. They still do everything pretty much exactly the same and produce a good product. So there's some of our superstars. Two Bar is also one I like to shout out, and Copperworks. And so we've got a good group of distilleries here in Washington State. To get to the alcohol part, the one thing you need is sugar. You need the sugars for the yeast in the same way. But if you're starting with wheat and corn and barley and rye like we are to make our products, those grains have starch but they don't have sugar in them. So step one is cooking, and then it gets a little more interesting because step two is conversion, and that's converting the starches to sugars. So we rely, like so many steps I'll be talking about, just on what already happens in the natural world. We just sort of refine it and corral it and just sort of shepherd it through the process to get a spirit out at the other end that actually tastes good. The conversion, we rely on malted barley. A lot of you know it's just sprouted barley, and so a gift from Mother Nature, God or Darwin, depending on how you think about these things. Sprouts, an enzyme is released, and that enzyme is designed to take some of that starchy husk of the grain, convert those starches to sugars, give that little plant seedling a jump start in life with a much more efficient food, which would be the sugar versus the starch. So we capitalize on that, and they have big malting houses, big as a football field, where they spread a thin layer of barley. They wet it down, warm the floor up, it naturally sprouts. When the seedling's about 1.5 inches long, they dry it and bag it up in 80-pound bags and sell it to people like us. For the process of making vodka, we only run ethanol. And for whiskey, it's mostly ethanol as well. 40,000 gallons of cooling water per month for that, just the condensate part of the end part of the distilling. So kind of knew that wasn't very sustainable. So we put our heads together back in production. We came up with a system that's now a closed loop. We have, for the big stills, we have 3,000 liters just in those plastic and metal totes there, water, and then we salvage the walk-in cooling unit that dissipates the heat out of the water into the air, and then we can keep reusing that water for 14 to 16 hours. Then we have to shut the still down and let it run overnight. But I haven't found anyone who wants to work longer than 16 hours anyway. It works for our system. But that means since 2016, which is a long time ago now, instead of 40,000 gallons a month, we use 0. For all of our stills are on that system for those different cooling systems. So it's been a huge help for our bottom line and our ecological footprint. So we're very happy with that. Given the design away to a few people, but we were quoted from a German company for a similar system for $750,000, but ours was, the first one was I think about $600. A lot of people make a huge deal about distilling. But really, I say the fermentation for your finished product is at least on equal footing as far as the flavors that go into what you're going to be drinking. The other thing that's extremely important, whiskey fans all know this, but it's the barrel aging for whiskey. Interactive. So the subtractive part is that heavy jar. If you've ever seen a busted up barrel for bourbon or a planter that's been made out of a whiskey barrel, you'll see that extra heavy char that has no relation to a wine barrel. It just has a very light toast on it. But that heavy char is to create charcoal, literally, that will work like an aquarium filter or a cigarette filter. It will take out bad odors and flavors from your whiskey. So that's a big part of the subtractive part that barrels contribute to the aging process. Some of the most negative flavors to our palates that go into the barrel will be transformed during the aging process to some of the most elegant and nuanced flavors to our palates. All right, let's get on to the tasting. That's the good part. Yeah.
And we're back. And you never know, quite what you're going to get when you go to a distillery tour. A lot of the gift shops are rather extensive. Mark went to the Woodinville distillery up in Woodinville, the Woodinville Whiskey Distillery tour prior to coming to Oola, so he had picked up some stuff in his videos on both the Woodinville tour and the Oola tour somewhere in the somewhere in the description. We'll put them in there so you'll have to link to. And I have a few bottles that we'll go through in a minute here, but one thing that you never know what you're going to get from the standpoint of what's available at a distillery versus what's on the shelf. And one thing, and this is not from anywhere in Washington, it's from Kentucky. And this is a bottle of Maker's Mark that when I went there many years ago, it's bottled in 2007 for me, is that you, at the Maker's Mark, because of their wax coating here, you get a dip and pound this thing to get it to flow down. And so this is probably a bottle I probably won't open, or I'll have to save it for a very, very special occasion because it's kind of unique. I guess if I went back again, which I hope to, and did another one, then I could get into this one. But what's funny is, and I think in another video I had with Maker's Mark, you can see the difference in color just in the off the shelf versus something you get at the distillery. So that is just my plug to go to the local distilleries, because maybe you'll find a product or a piece of merch there that's very unique, like a shirt. You know, I guess they can be unique. So Mark at NorthWest Bourbon threw down the gauntlet to go through 5 locals only, 5 categories and locals only. So we're kind of in all these top 5 lists, and so I put together a few just, you know, that I have here. My goal is to go to the distilleries in the area. What we learned on the tour at Oola was Washington was home to over 100 some distilleries up until COVID, and now that's down about 30%. It looked like the last count from I'll put it up here somewhere over here maybe, from a website was there about 88 in the state. So on to the NorthWest Bourbon Challenge. Something new, your current favorite, a cask strength, something different, and a party bottle. Something new. There's 2, I kind of get them mixed up sometimes. Sandstone Distilleries out of Tenino, and Skip Rock, which is out of Snohomish. This is a Skip Rock rye. This was a gift. Sandstone was if you looked at one of my previous videos, I don't know if I'll link it or whatever, was one of the distilleries that got caught up into making the hand sanitizer when they could no longer make product to sell. So I thought that was pretty cool. I bought a bunch of their product, and it's pretty good. From a new standpoint, I wasn't sure what he meant. I think this was somewhere it says it's aged at least three years or something like that, and this was aged no less than 1 year from an age. So I don't know if Mark said something new as an age or something new just to me. And so these 2 are pretty new to me. I've had a few drams out of both of them, and they're very good. My current favorite, Westland Single Malt, and this would be the Westland American Single Malt. They're located in Seattle, Washington, literally just down the street. I didn't realize what malt was. Malted barley, I mean, everybody hears that. And it wasn't until the distillery tour, which you just saw, if you watched the whole thing, where Kirby described what malting actually is, and where they spread the grain out and then let it sprout, and that goes into the process. And I'm, you know, you just really never know some of these things until you go on a tour or really dig deep into it. And so now that I know what the malt is, I think that's very interesting. And because malt for me is like a malted ball, and I was like, ooh, I don't like those things. Or a malted shake. I was never into a malted shake, but malted whiskey is obviously a different process, and this is a pretty good bottle. Doesn't have much out of it, but it's good. So the next thing is a cask strength that I'm going to go to. This is the Oola, and I'll even pour a little bit of this for myself. Got a nice gift from Kirby and Glen Karen. Just pour a little bit in there. It's a nice day out. I got a lot to do. Waitsburg whiskey from Oola Distillery, cask strength. And the Waitsburg is, I guess, another thing we learned. That is a town in Washington where I believe they kind of started. Oola is the name of the company, the distillery, and their German Shepherd, Oola. Kind of a neat name. Oh, it just smells so rich and so good at cask strength. The flavors this has in it. I'm not good at picking out flavors, but this has a lot of flavor, not a ton of burn, and it's really good. Next, something different. This is not my jam. This is something very different. It's from Heritage Distilling in Gig Harbor. Taste what they have. Skip over this one. So that is the something different from Heritage Distillery. Next, the party bottle. And this is kind of funny, and it kind of applies to Westland also. But I didn't have one of these for Westland. A product of now, Moet Hennessy. This doesn't fit the Woodinville whiskey bottle, which is now owned by Moet and Hennessy. So I think the Woodinville is a good party bottle because what Moet and Hennessy, as well as Remy, who purchased Westland, has done is make these available on a wider basis across the country. I don't know that you're going to find Oola much outside this area, you know, maybe the Washington, Oregon, Idaho area, maybe down into California. I think it is very difficult for small distilleries to get their products on a wide release. And so that is the upside of being bought by a giant conglomerate like Moet Hennessy. It says it on the bottom, Moet Hennessy. But the upside is you can get the bottles and enjoy them around the United States. And so what I thought I'd do is open this up. This is a Bevmo pick, private select. This was going to be my from Bevmo, Moet Hennessy. So I'll open this up and we'll compare it to the Oola real quick. A real nice stopper on it. I kind of think if I uncork this, is it going to blow the cork off? Yeah. Oh. That's really good. And in honor of Moet, how about that? We'll use a champagne glass. Well, that didn't work so well. Maybe. We'll just see which one I like better, this or the Oola. Well, it definitely has a different flavor than the Oola. A little sharper. It's a little thinner. The Oola cask strength is very thick and coating. It's yummy. And this isn't bad either. I think I'm going to blind those two with some other stuff coming up, but I think the Oola is a little bit better. I don't think that's indicative of all their products. It's just the way this one's working out. And your palate may differ. If you check out Mark's videos, that'd be great. Check out some of my other ones, and even some of, I think Woodinville has been reviewed by, I think at the Mash and Drum has reviewed Woodinville, and as several others have too. And so with that, thanks for stopping by. Like I always say, my tagline I always forget these days is pour 2 glasses because you never know when somebody's going to stop by, and thanks for stopping by.